Welcome to ZKast, everybody. I'm ZS Caraval from ZK Research, and I'm here for another thought leadership video. I'm joined today by Anurag Dhingra, the CTO of Cisco Webex. Anurag, why don't you say hi to everybody, and how are you doing?
Hey ZS, thank you very much for having me today. It's a pleasure to join you for this conversation. Looking forward to it.
We're going to be discussing a recent paper that I wrote with Webex on the Webex platform advantage, talking about collaboration, talking about the state of hybrid work and how the platform rolls into it. Before we start, though, I do want to give a quick shout out to eWeek. As always, all Zcasts are done in conjunction with the eWeek eSpeaks program. eWeek's my media partner. They have been, and it's been a pretty good relationship. So now, Anurag, we're fresh off of Enterprise Connect. A big topic there was hybrid work. And I watched, Javed Khan, the GM of Webex's keynote, and there's a couple of takeaways I got. One of them is that hybrid work, it's a really fascinating topic, right? We talk about it all the time. Everybody uses the term, but it's fundamentally different than remote work. With remote work, everyone's working at home. And with hybrid work, I think businesses have to be prepared for a scenario where no one's in the office, everyone's in the office, and every possible combination in between. And that is, it's confusing. I think companies don't really know how to get themselves there. I know at the a few months ago, I keynoted the UC Summit, which is part of UC Today, and one of the things I said was I thought the first wave of hybrid work, frankly, would be a bit of a disaster, right? And if you look at some of my data, right, my research shows that about 51% of employees will continue to work at home 2 to 3 days a week, another 24% at least 1 day a week, meaning 75% of the workforce is going to be hybrid in nature. And so that brings up some big changes in the office, and and I think you need to rethink what work is. And so, in my mind, the office moves from a place to work to a place to meet, and that's a big difference. So, we'll do most of our personal work at home, and then we'll go to the office to meet. I mean, I also think that you need to start outfitting people's homes with the right technology. And before, we never really worried about that too much. As a former IT pro, I'd give you the technology at the office, but at home, that's your problem. That can no longer be the case. And the third, and really maybe the most interesting aspect of this, is that we have to democratize the meeting experience to make it inclusive for everybody, right? And so I think that drives us more towards this collaboration platform. So, you being the Webex CTO, when you talk to CIOs, how do you advise them on what to look for when considering a collaboration platform?
Yeah, so ZS, you're absolutely right. I think we are in this new brave world, and everyone has to sort of figure out how to navigate this and find their own answer for hybrid work. I don't think anyone's got it quite figured out. There's a lot of learning to be done here. So one of the things that's most important, I think, for organizations is to find solutions that are flexible. Because as they learn, they're going to have new needs, they're going to discover new things, the new use cases, and they would want their solutions to really scale up and down and horizontally as well. So flexibility is really important. The other thing I'll say is that this is not just an IT problem. Solving for hybrid work requires you to think about culture, requires you to think about leadership, requires you to think about employee engagement. You talked about democratizing meetings and interactions. So this is beyond just the technology conversation. Similarly, when you start to talk about people getting back into offices and you don't really know how many people will show up there, you need to think about managing your facilities. There's a real estate question here. So what we're starting to see is really key collaborations between IT and HR and facilities. We're seeing this firsthand here at Cisco, but we're hearing about this from lots of our customers as well. So you want to pick a platform that lets you have those use cases and lets you have those cross-functional collaborations. And then finally, I'll say this is not just about software, not about productivity software, collaboration software. You need to think about security and compliance. You need to think about networks and observability. In order to provide a great employee experience and a great customer experience, you really want a platform that is extensible and that gives you that insight that you will need to be successful.
Yeah, a couple of key takeaways there. You're right. I've had more discussions with HR leaders, since the pandemic began than maybe I had in my entire career before that, right? So that's a pretty profound change. And I think when IT pros think of collaboration, they think of the tool that's on the user's desk, right? And you brought up a lot of other things, security, network, observability, things like that we need, but we don't often tie to collaboration, but all that works together. So now, an interesting thing happened a couple of years ago. We went into this work from home model, and I think a lot of businesses that I talk to anyways, they kind of made panic decisions on what to put in their organizations. They just consumed a whole bunch of technology, this for voice, this for video, this for meetings, right? And so now that we've had a chance to step back, what are some of the challenges they face, companies face as they prepare from work from anywhere, based on kind of the rapid decisions that they made leading into the pandemic?
Yeah. So first of all, I give the IT teams a lot of props for just making business work, right? Business continuity was a big deal, and they did whatever they could to keep the business functioning. So kudos to all the IT professionals out there, right? But I think the implication there is that you ended up with a very much of a fragmented environment in terms of tools, in terms of experiences, in terms of manageability. And then how do you manage security in that environment? These are all top of mind concerns for people now. Now that they got through business continuity question, now it's really around how do we make this manageable? So what I would suggest is people start looking at really for the long term and not really be stuck with the tactical decisions that they might have had to make. So when you start to think about longer term strategic positioning, that's where some of the earlier considerations I was bringing up in terms of flexibility, in terms of a best-in-class integrated homogeneous experience. So as an example, if you have a user identity on the platform that works the same way in a meeting, in a call, in a message, whether you're working inside of your organization or outside of your organization, to deliver a really fully integrated experience is super critical. And then when you start thinking about how are people collaborating, what sort of documents they're sharing, what sort of files they're sharing, what are they sharing in terms of IP in chat, how do you apply policy in a consistent way across all of the workloads, no matter which medium they're using? It becomes really critical as a capability. And observability is I think, table stakes. How do you ensure that every single person is getting the best-in-class experience? You can't do that as an IT organization if you don't have deep visibility into your network, into your application stack, and full observability is really important here.
Yeah, I think maybe a good way to sum this up is that we've all thought of collaboration tools as becoming important to business success, but it's really advanced collaboration tools that are increasingly critical to business success, right? So, for a CIO watching this or an IT pro watching this, how do you balance centralized and secured administration, but still providing the flexibility for line of business workers to configure their own apps and workflows? Because I think, historically, security, ease of use, all those things were almost at odds with one another, but they can't be anymore.
Yeah. So I think this is why it's important to start thinking about platforms and not just point solutions, right? And when you start thinking about platforms, some of these concerns are really horizontal concerns, whether that is security or observability, it cuts across the platform. One other key aspect that makes a platform is really extensibility. So rich set of APIs and SDKs so that you can customize the solutions to your workflows, to your use cases, and then the ability to really bring in other applications that might be part of your workflow and integrate them tightly with the platform. If you have a platform that allows you to do that through APIs while maintaining a consistent observability and security stack, that's really what you should strongly evaluate.
All right. Well, one of the interesting data points from my from a survey I did last year was where I asked CIOs what was the top their priority list for managing business during that stay-on period. And to no surprise, security was the top of that list, right? But I think in this industry that you and I work in the collaboration space, we often forget about security. So obviously there was a lot of public examples of that happening. So how does this shift to platform actually, deliver best-in-class security, along with all the capabilities that people need?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's really important in security is simplicity. I think when you start to make systems complex, I think it is just so difficult to manage them, and people just start ignoring security as a concern. So you really want to keep it simple, and this is why the platform approach is so important, because there is consistency in how you manage security policies. There's consistency in how all of the various products work on top of that platform. So encryption as an example, you and I are having this conversation, audio, video is our medium. If security and encryption is baked into the platform, then you can rest assured whether this is a meeting or a call or a messaging conversation, or file transfer, you can be rest assured that security and encryption is built in. You don't have to worry about it. Similarly, when it starts to, when you start to think about how do you apply policy, what are you allowed to share with other people, whether that is within the organization or outside the organization? How do you protect yourself from threat vectors? How do you protect your organization from viruses? This is where a consistent platform policy is super important. So this is where I think security went from being really complex in a lot of disaggregated point products to a platform conversation where it's consistency and it's easy to manage.
All right. Well, I brought up security and ease of use being sort of juxtapositions of one another. You talked about security. Now let's talk ease of use. How does Webex allow workers to configure their own workflows in an easy way without compromising security?
Yeah, so one of the core product principles that we talk about here at Webex is that simplicity does not mean that you give up on sophistication. I think you really want sophistication in the product, but you want to present that to the users in such a way that's easy for them to consume. And I think you also want to start to think about different personas, the end user versus the IT admin persona, and you customize the products to those personas, and you make the bells and whistles and the knobs available to IT administrator very different than what you expose in the product for the users. And then one other aspect of this design principle is really choosing a default very carefully. So you want to design the products to be secure by default, and you want the default options to be really security and privacy focused. And that's the approach that we've been taking in Webex and broader Cisco product portfolio for a very, very long time. We have a very transparent posture around our privacy policies. We publish our data maps for everyone to see on Cisco.com. And Webex is really leading the way in applying some of these practices to advanced technology like AI. So when you think about how we build AI, we are starting to do that in a very, very responsible way and a very, very transparent way. So it's really around striking the right balance in a product design process. And like I said, sophistication and simplicity don't have to be traded off.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty big change in the industry if that's the case. Now, I did start this off saying we're going to talk platform, and obviously Webex is you've done a lot of work making it easy to use, but frankly, none of that matters if the underlying platform isn't right. And so on screen right now, you should actually see the ZK research model of a collaboration platform, and it actually maps to Webex pretty nicely. A couple of differences, but I think for the most part they're in line with one another. And from my perspective, an industry perspective, when I think of platform, I think the foundation of it has got to be a cloud native foundation, and this is a big differentiator in the industry for yourself versus a lot of the older companies that are out there. Because if you're not cloud native, it's very difficult to be agile. And if you look at a lot of the so-called cloud or SaaS platforms today, they're built on older technology. They're basically monolithic stacks in the sky, right? So if you're not built on microservices, if you're not built on containers, then it's very, very difficult to be agile. On top of that cloud native foundation is you have all the necessary APIs that enable flexible access to voice, messaging, AI, video, bot capabilities, things like that. And then on top of that, you'd have a range of services and end user apps that are built upon that. And so, in fact, we're using Webex right now. And when I think of the Webex client, it's not really the product. To me, the cloud native foundation, the APIs of the product, Webex is simply an example of things you can build on that. And other examples are, a hybrid event platform, polling, things like that. So there's a whole bunch of different services. Contact center is another one that you can build on top of that API platform, right? And then alongside that, you have to have the proper centralized management insight for IT admins to be able to make changes and understand what they're doing. And then, of course, it has to be globally available. It has to be secure. It has to be compliant in order to help companies do what they do. And so what are your reactions to that kind of platform model?
I'm very glad to see you put together that model. I think that model makes a lot of sense. Like you called out, our model is very similar to the one you're putting together. So I'm very happy that the industry is starting to realize this approach. When I talk about Webex, it maps very nicely to the picture that you were just showing. We have a very scalable, a globally scalable cloud native foundation powering all of our experiences. And you're absolutely right. The Webex application that you talked about is built on a set of APIs. And these are the same APIs that we've exposed to everyone. They're published on developer.webex.com. And if you want, you could build an experience like, the packaged Webex client. And in many cases, we find our enterprise customers do that. They take these APIs and they customize the experience for their use cases. But another thing you can do is you can actually take this experience and you can embed it somewhere else, which is another aspect of really extending the reach of the platform. So, for example, if you are a salesperson who lives in Salesforce all day long, and you need to get on a call or you need to schedule a meeting with someone, you don't really have to leave that interface if you don't want to. You can actually have a WebEx widget embedded right in there. So that is part of how we built the product, and we've actually gone through a transformation. When you think about the original WebEx, it preceded the terms like cloud native and public cloud. Like these things didn't really exist in the vocabulary. So we went through a transformation as the industry has evolved, and what powers WebEx today is a very modern architecture that is scalable, built on microservices and cloud native, and that is what gives us the speed. And you heard us talk in keynote in various events that we've released thousands of innovations in the last year, and that's only possible because of this modern cloud native architecture that powers WebEx. We would not be able to move at the speed of the cloud if we didn't have that architecture.
Yeah, I will say that the term platform is probably one of the more overused terms by the vendor community. Everybody claims it, but often when customers deploy that product, it often reveals gaps. Some of the bigger gaps I see in the areas of security and global coverage, and often even in the AI insights and things like that. So what do you feel are some of the strengths of the WebEx platform?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I think when you start deploying and using these products, that's when you start to see the seams, and that's when sort of the platform story starts to fall apart. I'll point to a couple of things that I consider are really key strengths. So one, I think, is really core concept of identity for users. It is about you. It is not about your account. It is not about your machine. It is not about your organization. It is about you as an individual. And of course, you're part of an organization, so the organization can apply policies, but you can seamlessly collaborate inside and outside of a company with a single sign-on to WebEx. You don't have to switch accounts when you're talking to someone outside of your org versus inside. So that is the core principle of the platform approach that we've taken. Second, I'll say, is a single pane of glass for manageability. Control Hub provides you a very rich capability set. You can obviously configure all parts of the WebEx portfolio, but you get very rich insights, you get very rich analytics, you can do live troubleshooting, and then you start to see this new hub in terms of just making your enterprise work for hybrid work by really reaching out into these other areas, whether those are networks or whether those are facilities and with workplace sensors and so on. Security obviously is a key differentiator for WebEx. At least I consider our security to be best in class. And that is not just about encryption of real-time media streams. It's also about policy. It is really about data privacy. And then you talk about global reach. I think one of the things that people tend to forget with global reach is all of these regulations in different parts of the world and data residency requirements. And how do you actually make your product work well in all of those different geographies? So it's not just about scaling out your services in different data centers. It's also around building a platform that complies with all of these regulations. So WebEx, we've taken a very structured approach to solving some of these challenges, and I consider that a key value proposition of our platform.
Yeah, so that's interesting. From an industry perspective, I think a lot of people tend to think of the platform as the APIs for building custom requirements, and WebEx certainly does that. I think Legislate's a good example of that. But you've actually diverted from that, right, and expanded on that definition where you're now delivering value in multiple ways. So can you go through some of those?
Yeah, so APIs is obviously a key part of the platform, but as a consumer of the APIs, we make a promise to you. We make a promise that the same world-class security, the same world-class data privacy, the same advanced technologies in terms of AI are available to you through our APIs that are available to the WebEx applications and our video conferencing devices. And that is how we differentiate ourselves, because it is not just around building APIs and then every application on top of it has to deal with all of these concerns by themselves. You get world-class visibility in Control Hub, whether you have built an application on top of our APIs or you're using one of our package applications. Security, like I said earlier, is all baked in. And then you can actually really extend the platform in multiple ways because you have meetings and calling and messaging. You have all of these surface areas available to you to extend the platform through our APIs. And finally, you can take our packaged widgets and you can really embed them in a different application. So all of those are possible options. So our definition of platform goes way beyond APIs and SDKs, which is typically what people tend to talk about. Obviously, that is the key aspect, but then these other capabilities underneath.
I know also that you and all your competitors actually integrate with all the major SaaS players. ServiceNow, Zendesk, Salesforce, HubSpot, things like that. Those are all pretty common, but a lot of innovation, particularly in different vertical markets, comes from smaller SaaS companies. So can you highlight just a few of the smaller companies that maybe people don't know about that Webex integrates with that can add additional value, to some of those bigger ones?
Yeah. So absolutely. So I think one of the things that is very interesting is the Webex application itself has a framework built in where you can start to bring in other applications. And we see this really open up the realm of possibilities. And we see all sorts of applications, whether those are collaboration application, co-creation applications, like whiteboarding applications. We have lots of fun applications built in as well. We have polling and QA, and we have just games that teams can play with each other. And it is really easy for a small company to come in and build something that will start to show up in a Webex application, and then we bring the distribution to you. Given our millions and millions of active users, we can start to expose your applications to those users. And one of the things that we did very deliberately early on when we started building these frameworks is to make them open. We obviously, we started small, but now anyone can go and really build an application and get it published on apphub.webex.com, which is our app marketplace. And it's really easy for you to get started. We've tried to reduce the barriers to entry there. When I think about what type of applications are really becoming popular on the platform, obviously, co-creation applications, whiteboarding applications are really top of that list there. But really around engagement and culture building is a category that we are seeing a lot of adoption. And you and I were talking earlier around hybrid work is more than just IT. It's about HR and so on. We're seeing a lot of these team building type of applications become really successful on the platform.
Yeah, I know there's about a little over 100 apps that currently you integrate in, Miro, Mural, Smartsheet, HackerRank, things like that. So there are quite a few. I want to pivot now a little bit to different work from anywhere scenarios, because it's not just, when I talk about hybrid work, I maybe oversimplify it, talking about it being at home or in the office. There's a bunch of other places work from, right? People work from them. So what are some of the other work from anywhere scenarios that you guys have built products to address?
Right. So first and foremost, all of our APIs and SDKs and these embedded applications, they are available on our applications, whether those are on desktop or PCs or on mobile platforms. So it's a very consistent experience, and mobility is built in from day one. Now with our devices that go in video conferencing, conference rooms or huddle spaces or any space for that matter, they have the exact same capabilities. So if you build an application for whiteboarding, or you build an application for a game or a team engagement type of a thing, I can participate using my PC, and you could be in the office physically in a huddle space, and you could use one of the Webex boards there, and you could interact with that same application there. So that's kind of how we are really covering all the bases with work from anywhere. It's any device, any form factor where you can run our software or our hardware, you have the same capabilities.
Yeah, even within the device portfolio, though, you have, I think, some pretty unique devices. You've got you've had devices like the Webex Desk Pro and Webex Desk. You've had the predecessors to that, the EX, the DX series. But you just came out with a Desk Mini for home and office scenarios. So just maybe touch on that a little bit. Yeah. Right.
So the idea here was to really cover all type of workspaces, right? And of course, when you start to think about smaller workspaces, especially in your home, mobility becomes a key factor. And also the other piece is really limited space that you might have. So we've come up with this really great fully integrated device that is really portable. So, you could be working from your kitchen table one moment, and you can then just lift it up and take it to your bedroom, and you can continue collaboration there. So it's a really great device, really excellent form factor, and the design is such that you can use it as a second screen with your laptop if you really want to. Comes with really great acoustics, and now, at Enterprise Connect, we announced the Apple AirPlay support. So it's a really great speaker for your playlist. And I'm super excited about this device. Like, this is really, really cool in terms of not just the software, but the hardware design innovation that we've brought to market.
Yeah, I think it's got a certain amount of kind of cool factor to it too. So I'm looking forward to the first time I'm on my United flight and I see somebody drop their table, they're trying in front of them and put a mini on top of that. So maybe that's time to stop flying when that happens. So the last question I want to ask you is around future-proofing, right? And that's a big part of being a platform, is you may be able to address a customer's needs today, but what's your approach to future-proofing to make sure that customers also get what they need tomorrow?
Right. So I think one thing that you have to remember when you talk about future-proofing is really backwards compatibility and finding a way for customers to go from where they are today to the future. And this is where our platform approach really allows you to move forward with your, at your own pace. And when you start to think about an extensibility mechanism, backwards compatibility is built into them. And then finally, an open platform is really a principle that we adhere to very much. What we're finding is, no one size fits all in this new brave world. So we hear from our customers that, hey, I bought this really great Webex device, and I'm on Webex meetings, 4 hours a day. But then every now and then I get invited to a Zoom meeting or a Microsoft Teams meeting or Google Meet or whatever. And I want to use this great device. We were just talking about the Desk Mini, and how cool would it be for me to actually take all of my collaboration experiences there. And so we've taken that into consideration as building this platform, really opened up the platform so you can do all of those things. And that's another way for you to be very confident when you pick Webex that, you're really going with a platform that has interoperability built into its DNA, that has great security and privacy and compliance first approach to this platform. And obviously we deliver great experiences integrated out of the box. So that's how I would pitch it to our customers. And you can move forward very confidently, knowing that you've got the full support of a large company that was built on the principle of interoperability.
All right, Anurag. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for the overview on the Webex platform. I'd like to invite everyone to download a recent ZK research paper called Harmonizing Hybrid Work. I'll make sure the link is included in the description down below. Also, don't forget to click to subscribe, and you'll be updated on future ZKast. So, Anurag Dhingra, CTO of Webex, thank you very much for joining me today. And this is ZS Caravala signing off, and I'll see you next time on ZKast.